Good evening, church. Glad that you are back with us tonight, and I hope that you've had a good afternoon. I guess we got a little rain. Did all of Crockett County get a little rain, or just in Alamo? Not all of us. All right. Well, you missed out. There was some rain that fell today, but glad you are back with us tonight. Tonight we're going to look closer at the book of Matthew, chapter 17. And before we get into that, this morning's message, afterwards I was talking to Daniel Hooper, and he said, well, this morning's lesson was kind of like trying to drink water out of a fire hose. And I thought, well, I was not trying to blast you with all this information and you just trying to catch a drink with it. But I hope the message was one that you could use and challenge you and study and grow in your knowledge and maybe dig deeper into the Word of God. That was obviously my hope. And tonight is the same way, to be able to look at God's Word. And we're going to be looking at the book of Matthew. And something's important about the book of Matthew to understand. Number one, Matthew was a tax collector, so he knew the Jews very well. Matthew was also very detailed-oriented. And if you study the book of Matthew, guess what? You see a lot of the details, right? And one thing that Matthew does is he is very chronological, meaning the time and the dates work their way through, and so he is going to keep us in order of events a lot more so. Mark, he is all over the place. I mean, he was like, let's talk about this, let's talk about this. Hey, squirrel. He wasn't quite that way, but I mean, the Spirit was guiding him, but it was definitely event, and it didn't always line up in a chronological order where Matthew's does. And so I think that's kind of important to realize when we look at this particular event tonight that we're going to look at in Matthew chapter 17. If you're in Matthew 17, I ask you to turn a page back because a pretty significant event happens in chapter 16. And we want to get there before we really start unpacking, if you would, this Mount of Transfiguration that's going to happen, the background of this story. So when we get back in chapter 16, and you're probably quickly looking through and you're seeing right there in the middle of chapter 16 a pretty big moment in the life of the disciples. Peter gets a new name. Up to this point, he was Simon. He was Simon because that's what his given name was, son of Jonah, right? That was who he was. But in this moment, he gets a new name, not just a name, but a nickname, one that would have mattered a lot to him. And we know by definition what that name is. It's Peter, but it means rock, Petra. And so here is this name that Peter receives, and I can't imagine what the rest of the apostles thought about this. You know, were the rest of them trying to say something clever the rest of the time so Jesus would give them a new name? Were they jealous of what he got? The human side of me says they probably were, because that's what humans do, right? We always want to be the class favorite, and here it looks like Peter gave the right answer, and Jesus gave a nickname. And can you imagine being Simon going, hey, Simon, will you bring me whatever? And he's like, Peter, right? How does he correct him? Does he correct him? I don't know. But in this moment, you see a pretty significant conversation that's taking place. In a town there of Caesarea Philippi, where worldliness was huge and embraced and accepted, and Jesus takes them right there in the city and says, okay, who do men say that I am, right? That's the question. And right there, they're faced with, are you Satan? And I know they know that, no. But right here is who he was, is what the world was embracing. And then he takes them and says, who am I? Well, some say Elijah, some say a prophet, some say John the Baptist. And then he gets really pointed and he says, who do you say that I am, right? And the response that Peter gives, well, you're the Christ. You're the Messiah. You're the anointed one. And Jesus' response is, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah. Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. Flesh and blood hadn't revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And based upon this confession, based upon this answer, he says, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Guess what? We're still here tonight. The gates of hell have not prevailed against the church 2,000 years later. prediction is still holding, and until the Lord comes back, it will continue to hold. So in this moment, Peter gets a new name, but he also gets a little insight as to where the direction that Jesus is going, right? Then the next verse or two, what happens? All of a sudden, Peter is saying, or Jesus predicts his death. I'm going to die. And Peter's like, not on my watch. And then Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. Wow, all these back and forth conversations, and the resurrection is foretold. And then verse 24. Jesus told his disciples, if anyone comes after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father. Then he will repay each person according to what he's done. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here that will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. This idea that the kingdom, the church, is going to be established and Jesus is going to be praised, and it's going to be about this new journey that's there. The church that Jesus told Peter that he was going to build upon, that confession, right? Now, that's the background of this story. Here's the moment where, if you're a disciple, do you have any question? Can Jesus back up this claim? Now, he's been able to heal people. You and I know the whole story, right? We know the resurrection. Spoiler alert, the resurrection happens. He conquers death. We're not surprised by that in this building tonight, right? But this hadn't happened yet. He's been able to do a lot of things, but can he make the claim that hell will not prevail? Right there in the streets of the town where they seem to be worshiping Satan, or at least calling on these worldly gods, can he make the claim that he's going to build a kingdom that will not fail? Now, you and I, with our faith in Jesus, go, absolutely, he can do that. Do you think they were wondering, can he write that check? Can he establish a church that will last forever? Can he establish a kingdom that will endure forever? And I think based off of that question in the back of your mind right now, at least I may have brought it to the front, I hope that you will now look into chapter 17. Because I think that's really important to understand why Jesus has this moment. By the way, could he have gone on the Mount of Transfiguration by himself? Probably did. I mean, I don't say he went on Mount Transfiguration, but he removed himself often to pray, right? Who knows what happened when he was away by himself? Did he glow? Did his face turn white? Did his clothes glow? And we don't know. We don't know. But we know what happened in chapter 17, right? And what's different about this experience? Well, it wasn't just Jesus. It was a couple of other of the apostles. One who he had just given a new name to. One who he loved, as John says over and over in his gospel, and his brother. It's almost as though Jesus is trying to say, because when you read this story in a minute at the end, he goes, shh, don't tell anybody until after everything has happened. I want you to see that I can do this. Let's read the story with that thought in mind. And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun. And his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah taken with him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents. Now, some of your versions might say tabernacles, but I will make 3 tents here. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And while he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. And when the disciples heard this, they fell on their face and were terrified. For the record, I would have been too. But Jesus came and touched them and said, "Rise and have no fear." When they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. Verse 9, and as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, "Tell no one the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead." And the disciples asked him, "Then why do the scribes say that first Elijah must come?" And he answered, "Elijah does come, and he will restore all things. But I tell you that Elijah has already come, and they didn't recognize him, but did to him whatever they pleased. So also the Son of Man will certainly suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was speaking to them about John the Baptist. Now, in this moment, you've got a lot of things to unpack, and I'm going to grab about 3 things. We'll look at those, but it starts with this conversation. Let's build 3 tabernacles. Let's build 3 tents. And immediately after, he had this grand idea. Now, again, I'm putting a lot of Bobby's human feelings into this moment. But just a few verses before, Simon got a new name. That new name was Peter, right? And Jesus said, we're going to build this church. We're going to build this kingdom. And Peter then says, I got an idea. Let's make 3 tents. Let's make 3 church buildings, so to speak, right? A tabernacle is a dwelling place where God could live. So let's make 3, one in your honor, one in Moses' honor, and one in Elijah's honor. Now, that's pretty, if you're going to do some Mount Rushmore of the Bible, you're probably David's picture short of the Mount Rushmore, right? Elijah, Moses, Jesus, and David would probably be my top 4. I don't know, we might argue about another one, but you got big 3 right there, right? And you would go, well, that's a great idea. Up on this mountain, this is where they are. And how did Peter, James, and John know that it was Moses and Elijah? I don't know. Maybe they had a "Hello, my name is" sticker. I don't know. I have no idea. But here's what I do want you to realize. They recognized them. They understood who they were. And they not only recognized, they understood the value, the honor maybe that they deserved, right? Elijah, one who had prophesied, one who had beat Baal, one who had been with God and was drawn up, just called up. Yeah. Moses, the one who had led the Israelites out of captivity, crossed the Red Sea, got the 10 Commandments, got them to the edge of the Promised Land. Yeah, those are the guys. And it would make sense that we would raise this temple and we would make this place where these 3 would be. But before he could stop speaking, God says, "This is my son, listen to him." In other words, don't get too far ahead of yourself, Peter. Slow down. And so from this, I think we can get a couple of lessons. First, I want to bring out that there's life after death. This passage, when I get a lot of questions at school from time to time from kids and even from some of you guys, but is there life after death? Will we know each other in heaven? Will we know? How's that going to work? And this is one of the places that I come to when I try to answer the question. This is the place that I like to go to and say, look, it's obvious that Moses and Elijah lived on. Not only did they live on, they were recognizable. Who they were was recognizable, and they were remembered for what had happened. So if that's the case, if this is the moment, then I'm going to say, I think it's important to realize that we live on. That there is more than what this is about. That we have life beyond death. So I think that's an important lesson. Second lesson I think we need to look back is verse 5. Jesus is the Son of God. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, I take it back to chapter 16. How could Jesus say, or let me rephrase that. Jesus asked the question, who do you say that I am, right? And the response was, you are the Christ, the Son of God. Now, was Peter just guessing? Was he learn that? How did he know to say that? What was the answer? Did the other apostles go, I knew that answer. I should have said it. I'd have got a cool nickname. I don't know. But in this moment, Here's the question. Who am I? And he says, you're the Son of God. And then we get validation in verse 5, right? Bright cloud overshadowed them. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Another lesson I think we can learn is that Jesus is supreme. He is above all. Now, in this moment, I'm going to do little hand gestures, but temple or tabernacle for Moses, temple or tabernacle for Jesus, temple or tabernacle for Elijah, right? In this moment, we could get confused and think, well, they're all on equal playing field. There's no distinction between the three. They've all done great things for God. They've all done something. But in this moment, when Peter says, let's line them all up, let's have three, God's response is, this is my Son. Listen to him. There is no one above. Now, I'm not trying to belittle the contribution that Elijah made. I'm not trying to belittle the contribution that Moses made. They are men of honor. They are men who served in faith. They are men who did what God asked them to do, and they are great for that. But they're not supreme. Even they push back and they said, well, Elijah's got to come. And Jesus said, he did, he has. And they kicked him around. And then they realized in verse 13, oh, you're referring to the one who had to prepare the way, just like Elijah prepared the way for the one that was coming, and it was John the Baptist. But again, as great and awesome, are they supreme? Only one supreme. Maybe there were too many tabernacles that are built. Are there too many tabernacles in your life where you're putting things equal with Jesus? You know, I'm gonna put this tabernacle, I'm gonna have a dwelling place with God, and I'm gonna make him in my life, but I'm gonna have these other tabernacles that I build too. I'm gonna put them up on that mountain too. I'm gonna raise them up to the level of Jesus. You go, I would never do that. Do we ever do that with our feelings? What we think is right, that we raise our thoughts. Do we ever do that with our family? Has our family and maybe trips and things and what we do and where we go and how we take care of our money and our hobbies, and do we ever elevate them? Maybe even pass God in what we like and what we want. I go back as we close to the first commandment of the 10. Do y'all remember that one? There are no gods before me. Whenever we take those tabernacles and we put them in place and we basically say, I'm going to do it this way, and I'm going to elevate my feelings, and I'm going to build a tabernacle for what I like. This is my place to dwell. I want to remind you of what happened when they tried to equal Moses and Elijah to Jesus. Whatever you're building to make yourself happy, make sure that Jesus is still supreme in what you are. Don't have too many tabernacles. Tonight, the invitation of the Lord is open. And if you stand in need in any way and we can help in any way, please respond as together we stand and sing.